Well, that's it. My long journey home starts today. Just gonna take it slowly and just take it easy. No rush. So that's it. Trip is over. I'll explain why the trip is over and why I'm heading back to England. So the previous evening I'd been on the phone with my mum, and my dad has been living with Alzheimer's for a few years now, and it just became clear to me that I could no longer travel with the same peace of mind that I'd enjoyed over the previous 8 months, and just that I'd be more comfortable back at home with my family. So just like that, the next morning I woke up and headed straight for the Turkish border, and that's it. Trip's over. Well, there's still an epic drive ahead, so yeah, join me as I drive from Erbil, Kurdistan, back to England. Here I am just filling up with some petrol. There will be quite a lot of car driving content on this trip, but that's all right. We'll have fun. We're already at the Ibrahim Khalil border crossing. This is somewhere that I know I'll never return to. Here's just a random bloke, civilian clothing, just stopping the car, checking the documents. This is pretty normal. I was turned away from counters because I didn't have the right slip of paper I needed. I was dragged around by random people who I had no choice but to trust. And eventually I got through, and I was very pleased to be back in Turkey. But we'll just chill here for a bit. You know, the trip ending, the border crossing, it's a lot to take in, but everything's fine. We've got a long drive ahead of us, so just relax. You don't need to do anything. You don't even need to send me your prayers and well wishes. Everything's fine, just sit back there and enjoy the drive. And it was a fitting end to the trip, to be honest, that it ended completely suddenly and spontaneously. I got to enjoy 8 months on the road completely free, and it just felt right to turn back. I mean, I'd made it quite deep into Kurdistan in the car, so that's pretty good. And part of travel for me is to go to a frontier, a kind of place that you don't really know about, that might be a bit scary at first, but you normally find out that any fears you had weren't justified, and it's a perfectly safe and welcoming environment. And that was my experience in Kurdistan, on the other side of a hectic border. Safe, friendly, enjoyable place to be. So, after the border, I decided to drive to Sanliurfa, a place I'd visited last year. I knew of a good parking spot, and it was just a 4-hour drive from the border. So, that's it. At about 8 p.m, I parked up in my favourite multi-storey car park, had a walk round the square there, and just reminded of how many nice public spaces there are around Turkey. I headed straight for where I knew there was a supply of friendly cats, some comfort before another long drive tomorrow. Well, I was out of the car park and on the road early the following morning, and I decided to head towards Mersin on the south coast of Turkey because I wanted to explore the possibility of shipping my car home and flying back myself without the car. I could fly back to England in about 6 hours rather than the week or so it would take me to drive. And it would also save crossing the 6 borders I needed to pass through in the car. So I found some local vehicle shipping agents in Mersin, and this was actually another place I'd visited last year, which was good because I knew I needed a local Turkish speaker to help speak with the shipping agents, and luckily I knew just who to ask. It was Bilal and his friend from Gold Wax Car Wash in Mersin. I'd met these lads the previous year, and there are some people you meet for the first time and you just immediately become mates. And I took my car into Gold Wax. It was about 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and you'd think they'd be keen to get the car washed, start a busy day, but instead they sat me down, we drank tea, had a nice chat, they showed me their classic cars, and just generally top blokes. People who are generous with their time to strangers like that, they're the real people in this world. And they also happen to do one of the best and most detailed car washes I'd had on my trip. I say one of the best because, well, I don't need to remind anyone watching about the Thessalonica car wash. Now that was just a thing of beauty, but the car was slightly newer back then, but that will always remain the best. But Gold Wax in Mersin comes a worthy second in my book, and more importantly, I knew that they would be willing to help me get some shipping quotes for my car, so that's why I decided to go. And meeting these lads was just one of the many times on this trip, especially in Turkey, that just reminded me of the effect these small interactions can have on one's life. And it happened a lot in Turkey. One day I was parked at the side of a pretty secluded road, and I say it casually, but this was actually probably the lay-by of my dreams. Really quiet road, and right next to this rich pine forest that was it was just a great place to be, and gave me prolonged shade from the afternoon sun. It was just the perfect spot, and from thenceforth it was the lay-by against which all others were to be measured. It was just the perfect spot for the day. And I was just settling down, nothing on the agenda really, maybe read a bit of my book, have some bread and oil, probably have a nap, just generally having my perfect day in the car, really. And as I was looking out the window, I saw a shepherd come down from the hills with his flock. And to tell you the truth, I'm always a little bit wary of shepherds because they obviously know the area extremely well, and they're just more likely to notice something out of place, like my car. And I'm just always worried they might give me an angry, judgmental look. That's kind of what I'm afraid of from shepherds, really. That is the worst case scenario I can imagine, but I don't want to trivialise the angry look, especially from a shepherd, because before arriving in Turkey I was parked up somewhere near the Greek border in Albania, and in the morning a shepherd was walking by with his flock, and he gave me the look, the one that says, "You don't belong here, boy. You should leave. You're not welcome here." And that was the look. But maybe I'm projecting all of this, and he might just be going about his day, but it really, at the time, felt like a deep personal resentment that he'd somehow understood my character and just was against everything I stand for. And it's this kind of past trauma that has me slightly nervous when I saw the Turkish shepherd approaching from the hills. But when he did finally arrive down at the road, he looked at my car, he saw me. I was kind of in the shadows, peeking at him, wary of his judgments and worried he might give me a look of disapproval and potentially ruin my whole day. But he just saw me and gave me a warm smile and a wave, and I waved back, smiling, and it was just a great moment, really. He will never know how grateful I was just to have a little reminder that everyone is generally quite friendly and chilled out, and I'm not doing anything wrong or upsetting anyone. And all it took was a little smile and a wave. And maybe if I just smiled and waved at this terrifying looking Albanian shepherd, then he could have smiled and waved back, and we both could have had much better days. But I did have the chance to put this theory to the test when I was recently in Kurdistan. I was taking an early morning walk around Duhok, and as I looked up at the houses around me, I saw this older man watching me from his balcony, and he was giving me a look, a look that would have previously caused me to lower my gaze and shuffle away. But I looked back at him, I gave him a wave and a smile, and I said, Assalamu alaikum, the greeting, and it worked. He immediately smiled and waved back and greeted me, and I was just smiling as I was walking down the street, and that's sometimes all it takes. If you're willing to make the first move, there's a world of warmth and welcome out there. And it was a great lesson for me. So that's it. It may sound like something from a parable, but I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that my life was changed forever by a single wave from a Turkish shepherd. Well, when I turned up at Gold Wax Car Wash in Mersin, it turned out they were closed. I did message Bilal, but he said he was having to deal with something and he wouldn't be opening that day. But to be honest, during my drive from the border, I had gone off the idea of flying home. Turkey's just a great place to drive. You can go through 3 or more completely different landscapes in a single drive, and the roads are all first class, and I was just enjoying the drive. More importantly, my car got me out here, and it seemed appropriate to drive it back, and it would give me a few more days to reflect on my trip as well. If you are coming down from a big trip, you don't want to suddenly be put in your parents' living room. It's not appropriate. You need time to gather yourself. And I wasn't going back to fix any emergency, so I could just take my time and enjoy the drive. So I set a course for the Bulgarian border. I knew I couldn't drive it all in one day, but just decided to drive the route and just pull over whenever I got tired. So that was it. With renewed enthusiasm for my long drive home, I had a nice afternoon stroll around Mersin, and just a nice place to be. People are just chilled out, and had one last tantuni before hitting the road. And it's sometimes just great to drive when you have nowhere to be, no time, no destination, just really long stretches of very nice roads. And after quite a long drive, driving till around 11 p.m. that night, I headed off into a random village area, somewhere near Bolu, just to park and fall asleep. And this would be my final night in Turkey, as I'd be heading to the Bulgarian border the following day. And I think we'll take a short break there. I don't have a load of footage So I'm going to have to pad it out to a few more episodes of this long drive. But I hope you can join me next time. We've got lots to get through. We've got we've got border crossings. We've got breakfast cereal. Just loads going on, really. We've got we've got roadworks, traffic jams. We've got a tunnel. So that's it. Yeah. Oh, and for the first time in 7 months, I fill up my own car with petrol. So, toll roads. We got loads of toll roads to look forward to. So yeah, join me next time for the next episode of the Erbil to London Mega Drive. See you then. €33. I think it charged me to stay overnight in the motorway system.